Welcome, everyone, to the Content Crash Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Hartnack. As always, joining me is Kino Eastman. Kino, what's going on?
Horizon Zero Dawn and Street Fighter V are killing my free time. Slowly. Mainly Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh my god, yeah. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I have to get around to playing it, but my free time is being eaten up still by the world of Zelda. Breath of the Wild is I can't put it down. I'm doing like everything in the game. I'm trying to do this and that, and there's so much to do, and I never get bored of it. So
it's the mark of a good open world game, man.
Absolutely. So today, I'd like to talk about something that I've written about in the past, and it just kind of came to me like, maybe I'll circle back and give an update on what I wrote about 3 years ago. Indie studios versus AAA studios. What do indie studios bring that AAAs have been using, and what really defines the AAA and what the indie studios can do, and what we see them doing more and more of, actually pushing the industry to new levels. So yeah, when I wrote a couple years ago for a site, Indie Juice, I was focused mostly on indie gaming. I got review codes from devs, and I covered tons and tons of indie gaming. And the thing that I noticed was a lot of them tried to push the envelope when it came to creating new and innovative ways to experience games. They always tried. There's a lot that tried new mechanics. There's a lot that tried different storytelling techniques. But what really intrigued me was taking a closer look at this, at what they were doing as opposed to the AAAs. I would say that lately AAA gaming has become a little stagnant in a way, in a few words, if I would. But so like games like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty, those big, huge, you see their ads on the television. They're pushing millions of units out. But when it comes to the game being released, what do you actually get? Call of Duty it's been a huge franchise. It still is a insanely large franchise, and they're still pushing units out like at an incredible rate. But over the years, what have they really brought? They change up games here and there. There's a new little mechanic here. There's a new way that they're presenting a certain feature in the next game, and that's how they've been kind of presenting it. But at the core of it, I feel like it's all the same. I don't particularly like the series anymore. I did like it when it first started. I thought it was great, to have a kind of standardized war game, but now it's just kind of become a little redundant. And why do I need to spend $60 every year for just what amounts to basically new maps? You know what I'm trying to say?
I hear you, man. Something in the ways of sales kind of happened with Mass Effect recently, Andromeda, and I know they have the same paid packs for like online and stuff, and I feel like since they've been pushing that, and the main story kind of was getting bashed for the facial animations and the gameplay and it being too expansive and all this stuff. It's almost like they made the story, they made it big, and then everyone was playing online after a while. I think I know some people who didn't even finish the story, and they're just playing online and just like buying some loot crates and treating that as a Mass Effect experience. I don't know if that was the goal, but I feel like that's not how I wanted to spend my money, even though the multiplayer is really good. Um, it's very weird that that's kind of how Mass Effect has turned out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like horde mode is the thing a lot of people were just looking forward to, and the main story is kind of just didn't do as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a shame when you look at it. Like, Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 were this insanely large scale scope of, and a really engrossing story. And I just kind of lost it on Andromeda. It was just like, it's just a game that's trying to call itself Mass Effect.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I see what you mean by that, and it just brings me to that point again. Like, these AAA studios are kind of stagnating and not really trying to push anything. But in their defense, they're kind of being forced by their publishers, and the people in the suits trying to make that bottom line and make that dollar.
Yeah.
Give the people more of the same. Give the people what sold in the first time. So don't broke what isn't. Don't fix what isn't broken. So, which I guess for them, it's working obviously because they keep on churning out stuff like that. I always kind of look at like the Assassin's Creed franchise. I'm not particularly fond of it in general. The first game was a cool concept. It started off great, and then halfway through the game, I kind of got bored of it. The same thing happened with 2. I skipped 3, and then 4 came out, Black Flag, and I played it. I've been playing it. I'm still in the middle of it, but I've kind of turned that into just a pirate simulator. I do minimal story. I do enough story just to get me to the next zone or the next area and unlock some areas, but I'm not looking forward to advancing the story. I'm looking forward to sinking ships and going diving and doing all pirate stuff because I love being a pirate. And I think it was kind of that made me look at the franchise and go, wait a minute, I think they did this wrong, and maybe they should have gone a separate way with the franchise, instead of keeping this whole big story, this story from game to game about these assassins. And yes, it's an Assassin's Creed game, you have to have assassins in it, but the way you present your story could have been massively different game to game, and I think they missed the mark. Which, because they have the bones, they have the core for a good game. Like Black Flag is, I love it as a pirate game, but as an Assassin's Creed game, I could care less. So it's yeah.
I feel like they kind of lost their way after 3. The way it ended and the way things happened, they kind of ended the story abruptly, and it was like, well, what do we do now? And they just continued. And it's continued in a direction where they had microtransactions and multiplayer and locations that didn't really tie in very well. It was just a lot that felt like fluff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of bad when your open world game with a rich story is kind of reduced to its lesser parts, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like I said, it's disappointing with the technology that these developers have at their hands. They should be, in my opinion, putting out some pretty unique experiences consistently, whereas opposed to what they are putting out, which is the same experience, just told a slightly different or in a different setting. But that's where the indie game comes in, because I like I said, I've covered so much in the past few years with indie gaming in general. That's where you're seeing the innovation. That's where you're seeing the new concepts. That's where you're seeing the testing that goes into that gets transferred over into some AAA games. And you know, looking at a AAA studio compared to an indie studio, you can definitely see why. It's because the indie studios are less of a risk when they introduce new concepts. You know, I take it like you have a team of 6 people working on an indie game. Obviously, on a AAA game, you have hundreds of people working on it. That's their livelihood. That's their jobs. A lot of indie gaming, and with the tools out there now, it's easier and easier to make a game. So you don't need, you know, a whole team of developers behind you. All you need is an idea, and you just make something short and simple and cool. And it's been growing and growing, and there's better and better games in the indie scene. So, you know, it's an interesting thing to look at between how these two different types of studios function, and how the indie studios kind of embrace the passion of making games and are able to put out some amazing things these days. You know, you take a look at a game like Hotline Miami, you know, that's from an indie studio, and it's an awesome game. It's
Highly addicting.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites in the past few years. You know, I loved 1 and 2, and it's a cool concept. It's simple, and it doesn't take a huge assembly of a team to create, and they made a killing. You know, looking at sales figures, they made an insane amount of money. You know, that's also in part to Devolver Digital as a publisher, kind of pushing the game, but you know, you still have to have a solid game to back it up.
Of course.
You know, then games like oh god, I just had it in my head. You know, you take a look at another game that's considered indie, but it was backed by a big publisher, Sony. It's No Man's Sky. That totally bombed, but that was more of just an indie developer promising way too much. Did they make the sales? Yes, they did. They actually they made a ton of sales on that game because Sony pushed it so hard. You know, was it, in hindsight, bad move on Sony? To some people, yeah, it's a terrible move on Sony. They pushed a bad game to us. But to some of the people that are the suits at Sony, they pushed the game that made them money. So, you know, with these, you're seeing a lot of these hybrid studios kind of popping up as well. I know I'm kind of like all over the place, but I just wanted to get to the core of the hybrid AAA, maybe publisher funding the smaller guys, like the Hello Games, indie studios. Before we started recording, you had mentioned Hellblade, a game you're really looking forward to, and that is this sort of hybrid studio that I'm talking about. So, you know, it's being made by Ninja Theory, and you know, it's had some trouble in development, but it's almost there. It's almost at the finish line. So, you know, I know, like you said, you're extremely excited for it to come out, and yeah, what do you have to say about something like that?
I think it's a good move. I understand why it's not everyone will be doing it, because you have to take like a whole section of your studio or your company and make a whole studio and throw 20 people at it, and hopefully it works. And like you said, they had a lot of hiccups, and they had to reinvent the wheel for themselves, reinvent their combat, and make their own mocap studio and their own capture equipment, which is crazy. They had a actress problem, their mocap person, and the voice changed, and all this stuff. You name it, it happened. But they're still going along with the idea of somebody suffering from a real mental illness and going through this mostly story-driven game and trying to do it in a proper fashion. And those kind of themes are usually like abused in a normal AAA thing. Like you see someone with a mental illness and they're a serial killer, or they do something crazy like that, or it's not portrayed properly, or there's no story whatsoever. It's just mainly they made like a combo system for their game and just goes on like that. But they seem to be trying to really do something old school and linear, and I'm curious to see if it comes out on top or not. I think that's really why I've been following it for so long, because no one's really gone this far with the idea, and I want to see how this product turns out, for better or for worse.
Right, and looking at the studio's history, they have a track record that's good. They put out like Devil May Cry, Heavenly Sword. They did didn't they do some work with Disney Infinity, the game that game, I believe. So they have a track record of releasing pretty decent games, to decent to phenomenal. So, but this whole, they even refer to themselves as the independent AAA.
Yeah.
Which, so even this term is catching on, and like you said, they're trying to innovate. They're trying much different things than a actual AAA studio has been trying. And it's going to be interesting to see when it releases. Does it have an actual release date yet?
Yeah, for some reason it escapes me, but yeah, you can pre-order it.
Yeah. Okay. August 8th. It'll be releasing for Windows and PlayStation 4. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of development route they're taking. Or another game that I don't know what to call them. So Star Citizen. At this point, everybody's heard of it, and everybody is pretty much aware of their business model. They have an insane amount of money that they raise through crowdfunding and other ways, and they have a ridiculously large team assigned to different parts of the game and developing that. Obviously, it's taken quite a long time, and it's still a really far out from release. So, but would you consider them a AAA game or a indie studio? It's really hard to say.
Yeah. When you look at it, if we're just talking visuals, if I know nothing about the game, right? If I just looked at the visuals, I was like, what studio made this? They must have a ton of money. Was it Blizzard? Like it looks great.
Yes.
If you want to take it at a surface level. But when you go in, I suppose everything kind of changes around, and I guess the line kind of blurs, kind of like how we were talking about earlier with Hellblade. But for someone just looking at it, just to see it out of nowhere, you couldn't tell, really. You would just think it was this high budget game on the way.
Yeah, it's it's definitely something that no one else is trying, and something that no one else has even thought of, and like I said, the money they're raising is insane. They have AAA money, and they have essentially AAA developers on the team that have worked on AAA games in the past and stuff like that, and they have motion capture and voice actors, and they're getting. If you look at the game and you look at the trailers and you look at all the gameplay footage they have and all the new stuff that's coming out constantly, it's a very, very impressive game. But ultimately, is it going to release and be this, what they're promising and what they're, you know, what they're trying to develop and be a full immersive game? Or is it just kind of a tech demo that they're, like I said, they're if we consider them an indie dev, they're pushing things to a crazy level.
Mm-hmm.
So is that innovation just going to be used for, some bigger things down the road? Maybe they go, hey, thanks for testing out our game and testing out our concepts, but we're going to go away for a little bit and we're going to develop something totally new with all the concepts that we learned and all the technology that we have now, and we'll give you your full game in a different format or a different setting kind of thing. They're a weird studio to look at right now when it comes to what's going on, but they're definitely innovating and they're taking things to the next level, and it's exciting to see what they're doing. I follow them. I watch all everything that they put out on YouTube, and I try to keep up with as many interviews as I can with their developers. They're doing some awesome stuff. So,
It's not a tech demo.
yeah. Everybody's praying it's not a tech demo, especially people who have sunk a ton of money into it already. But so this brings me to, indie gaming, like I said, is innovating. They're the ones trying the new mechanics. They're the ones trying new storytelling techniques. And if I look back at my article, and I'm always going to keep referencing my article because I think it's still relevant today, most of it, where these indie games are less of a risk. Like I said before, they can try new things. You come up with a concept for a new mechanic, whatever it may be. If you're an indie developer, make a game out of it. See what happens. You can do that. You can create something totally new, something totally not tried, not tested out, and you can make something, small enough to where, you can just get it out there, $5, whatever, $10, whatever you want to charge for it, and all you're investing is your time and your knowledge. You're not investing someone else's money. You're investing your own money if you have to buy software and stuff like that. But it's really just your time. One of the games that I listed in my article years back was a game called Thomas Was Alone. This game was really cool. It was made by one guy. All he did was hire one voice actor and I believe one other person to do sound. But he coded everything, coded the game, created the story his own, and he did it in his free time. I believe at the time he was working at a game studio, and then, he'd go in, work on what he had to do for the day, go home, fire up his computer, and work on his own game. And it took a couple months. He got it out, and it was one of the most, it was one of the most beautiful games ever I've ever played in a simple way. I don't know. Have you ever played it?
I haven't played it. I've seen some stuff on it. I've seen some reviews, but I haven't actually played it myself.
It's you take a look at the concept, and it's literally different sized and different shaped blocks that have different personalities. Okay, and there's narration above it. And the soundtrack is absolutely killer. And I've never felt more attached to what are essentially inanimate objects than I've ever. It was such a a awesome experience because it was so minimalistic and it was so it was challenging, but it was an easy concept. It was an easy game to get into, and just, it was short enough, but it was more of like a proof of concept. He proved that storytelling can be good no matter what your characters are, as long as you have a good script and solid mechanics and a good overarching theme. So yeah, a AAA studio obviously can't make a game about blocks, but if you take that concept and put his story into a AAA setting, it wouldn't work. When you think of AAA games, you think of these huge, big set pieces, the cutting edge graphics, and just big. I always think of the AAA game as just the behemoth that's coming, and everybody's going to be on it, everybody's going to be talking about it. Whereas the indie games, not a lot of people know, but they're just kind of in the background, pushing everything forward. So, another thing that kind of struck me when I was doing some research on this was, yes, indie games are pushing the envelope further, but are a lot of them getting lost? I did some number crunching, and I took a look at some sales figures of some certain games that were intriguing to me, and I found some kind of disturbing information. So there's two games that struck me when I reviewed them a couple years ago. A game called Black Hole and a game called Tarion Saga KR17. So Black Hole plays like think of like Fez. You manipulate your environment in puzzles and to get to the next area. It was very well polished. It had voice acting. It was fun. It was engaging. It had tight mechanics. So it was. I gave it a great review. The studio behind it was phenomenal. They were really, really good to me. And then there was a game, Tarion Saga. That game was more of... It was a platformer. It was more of like... I guess you could say it reminded me a lot of Mega Man. So obviously I was pretty into it. But yeah, it was just another platformer. You have a little robot that you're controlling, and you can shoot stuff, and you get to the next area. Boom, you're done. Both games were small teams, short games, but I looked at the Steam Spy, which is a site that kind of aggregates all games on Steam and tells you some information about them, like release date and basic information like that. But also it tells you how many people own the game and how many people have it installed right now. What their peak player numbers were and all that. So Black Hole, when I checked yesterday, had 24,000 owners. Tarion Saga had 38,000 owners. And I was like, that's kind of low. So then I did a cross section of some bad games that have made the news a couple years ago. One, if people remember, was Day One Gary's Incident. This was a game that a very, very popular YouTuber or game critic, Total Biscuit, he reviewed, and he ripped it to shreds. The developers of the game kind of came after him, and they went back and forth. They threatened legal action, all that. If you look at any review on it on YouTube, this game is a big mess. It is atrocious. I'm saying it as well. It's it's a train wreck. um,
If you look at the sum up on the actual page, even the grammar is off. Like
yeah.
the spacing of like periods and everything is just
Oh
it's
my
not
god.
even
Yeah.
presented or written well.
No. It's. Oh, I don't know how it even got listed on Steam. Like, obviously the green light system back then was kind of messed up and letting anybody post anything there. But, I went to Steam Spy and almost 100,000 people own that game. What? Why? It got so much bad press, but does this just kind of reinforce the theory of no press is bad press, and as long as your name gets out there, you're gonna sell. And then another game I took a look at was Bad Rats. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one.
No, not me, no.
It's a really bad game. Bad animations, bad bugs, tons of bugs, and bad platforming, and but that has 345,000 owners according to Steam Spy. Like, that's insane. Now, it is an insane amount of people for an indie game. On the flip side of that, Bad Rats over the years has become a joke game. A lot of people buy it because on Steam sales, like, I bet you if you look it up on the Steam sale right now, it's under $1. So it's one of those games where you can just be like, haha, just throw it out to your friends, like, I'm giving you Bad Rats because reasons, I want to mess with you. But these two critically terrible games have at least more than half owners over a game like Black Hole or Tyrion Saga. It's concerning. So, but the point of this little exercise with looking at the numbers was, do some indie games that are absolute gems get lost these days because there's so many? Is there an oversaturation, if you will? I obviously, looking at these numbers, I think there is. There's just way too many games coming out now, and it's hard to keep up with everything. And with the sheer amount of games coming out, you're gonna get some missed gems. Hey, let me look up Bad Rats. Did you look up Bad Rats?
It's actually 49 cents on sale.
49 cents. So
and
yeah, see, it's
the recent reviews is very positive, and overall is mostly negative, mostly positive. Excuse me. I think because games like this, like you said, bad press is better than no press. Like,
yeah.
It becomes something to do, or it becomes something to stream, or guys, I'm gonna play Bad Rats tonight. Do you want to watch? And it blows up.
Yeah.
When people see it and they gotta buy it, and they play it for different reasons.
It became it's so bad it's good. It
seems like a little phenomenon.
Yeah, it's the B movie,
a little cult phenomenon
of gaming.
Right.
You see these cult movies that come out. They get it's like you said, it's a phenomenon. Looking at the at the footage of Bad Rats, it's just, oh god, the janky animations and the bugs. Oh my god. But yeah, does a game like Bad Rats deserve to be more visible than a game like Black Hole? It's an interesting question to pose, but I guess marketing plays into it, and if you're going to be a developer, an indie developer, you're going to do everything that you can to get your game out in front of people, and whether that is taking to YouTube or taking to Twitter and kind of calling out other reviewers, and marketing has become almost toxic in some cases.
Right.
Yeah. you got developers yelling at critics and critics yelling right back, and it creates that drama that people like me want to see. You know, I enjoy the drama. It's interesting to look at. Do I own Bad Rats? No. So, you know, it hasn't.
I'll send it to you right now.
Exactly. So there you go. It just made, you know, it's that joke game that gets passed between friends.
Yep.
So yeah, it's interesting. But did Bad Rats push gaming to the next level in any way? No. Does it do AAA studios kind of sift through their indie games and go, huh, let's take a look at Bad Rats. Can we use anything that they've implemented? No. Yeah, it's so the dichotomy between, you know, what these AAA developers are looking at to get their new mechanics and their new concepts from, it can be skewed. It's the world of gaming is just so discombobulated right now. There's so many different types of games. There's so many different types of ways to develop your games, and you know, we're seeing, you know, the stagnation of the AAA game and the I don't know what the right word is for the indie games. I keep saying oversaturated, but you know, for every good indie game, how many bad indie games are there? Plenty, absolutely plenty. And you know, the good ones, most of the good ones do shine through, and they break out and they make their sales and they make their mark on the industry. But there are some other good ones that just, for whatever reason, don't pick up the steam, if you will ignore the pun.
It was a good pun.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Kind of wrapping up, this was a topic I wanted to cover because, you know, like I said, I wanted to revisit it after a couple years, and it's still as confusing and, you know, disjointed as it ever was, and it's ever going to be. I still believe that the overall theme is going to be the indie game driving the AAA games in terms of creating the new mechanics and creating the new storytelling techniques. We're going to see that through indie gaming forever and always at this point. It's so much easier, and daily it gets easier daily to make a game. You can go on YouTube.
People are learning faster and faster.
You can go on YouTube and learn how to make a simple game in a month, maybe probably even less than that if you know some background in some certain things. So yeah, it's, you know, gaming has become so easy to do for some people that, you know, it's interesting because we're getting so much, and it's, you know, me and you growing up, it was always, you know, we didn't have indie games, in a sense of, you know, daily games coming out that were interesting to us. You know, we had to wait. You know, we grew up on the Nintendo and you know, Sega and N64, and then up to the PlayStation. There wasn't a lot of indie gaming going on there, so we never. You know, we got our share of the bad games, but not on this scale that the bad games are being turned out.
Right. There was like you could like develop. There's so many companies, publishers and stuff for Super NES games. It's like there's names that you'll never hear again. They made like one game for Super NES. It was just 200, 300 games just flying out from all kinds of places. And yeah, you can't really call them. I guess couldn't really call them indie because some turned to full-fledged studios and others just kind of went away. It was like almost anyone's chance. I
Yep.
suppose would be the best way to say it.
Yep. And there was more of an investment. I feel
Right.
back then, if you're going to make a game, you have to put up some more money than what you would today. And today's, even with like inflation and all that, like, you know, I can make a game right now with little to no budget, whereas back then you did have to have a budget for your game. So, yeah, gaming is, like I said, it's complicated out there, to make games, and all we can hope is that we get some more good than the bad. I know I'm gonna probably keep getting my share of the bad ones. That's just the nature of the business that I'm in with reviewing and stuff like that. Um, we also had the conversation last week, me and you offline, about some of the bad games that I've gotten in the past.
Hmm.
There's a lot of duds out there, but hopefully, with the new technology and these, plenty of kids coming out of college or whatnot and having these crazy ideas, that we're gonna get some awesome stuff, and the line between indie and AAA is gonna start blurring more and more. You mentioned Hellblade. I mentioned, as bad as No Man's Sky was on launch, it still was a pretty risky and innovative game. Ultimately, it failed in the gamer's eyes, but it pushed, I think, the definition of an indie studio to the next level. So, yeah, I mean that's all I have on studios. It's, like I said, it's crazy, it's confusing. Just wanted to get some thoughts out there, but yeah. What do you make of the indie versus AAA?
Um, the I noticed that my wish list for like Steam or my catalog of just downloaded games on my computer, I'm not taking up as much room because a lot of them are indie, and it wasn't because I was just actively seeking indie games, but it seems to be where a lot of my enjoyment is coming out now. And I realized after playing like a lot of these AAA games, which now kind of have to be open world, or most of the time are open world. In my personal opinion, don't have to be. You can make a linear game great.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, I think that's where some of the best storytelling is. But a lot of your time, like you look at people's hours, like in a certain game, they'll have like 60, 70, 80, if it's not an RPG or whatever. But a lot of that's like collecting this token or picking up that token or running and getting this sunken treasure or something like that. But you're not always having fun. But the hours I'm putting in these other indie games is just me playing that game for pure enjoyment. And whatever the one thing they're giving me to do is, I'm playing it for that many hours, equal to to a AAA game.
Equal,
So
equal and
I feel
above.
like, yeah. So I figure if your time should be spent enjoying what makes a game fun, and not your hours shouldn't reflect the content of the game just because things are there. You know what I mean? Like it, the
Yeah,
hours you put into a game should be you fully enjoying the game to its full extent, not because part of it was to collect something for 20 hours and then move on because you want a trophy.
yeah. Well, that's another kind of, I guess, issue all in itself, is the trophy
Yeah,
gathering. Some people are completionists, but do they
can't blame them.
really
I
get
am
the
too.
satisfaction out of that? W-
Right.
if you don't enjoy
It's
the game, why are you gonna continue to just get the trophy?
right.
Or if you did enjoy the game and you completed it, but you didn't like the side quests or whatever, why are you going to go back?
Hmm.
Um, you know,
Sometimes completing the game as it should be enough, maybe
yeah.
if it's made well enough, right?
I mean,
My
like,
hours were spent. I made my money.
oh yeah, and I'm also in the middle of Final Fantasy 15, and that game is long. Obviously, all Final Fantasy games are fairly long, but when I eventually beat it, am I gonna go back and play it again to get a completion? A 100% completion? Probably not. More than likely not. I'm not a completionist when it comes to the game. I wanna play a good story. I
Yeah.
love good storytelling. Final Fantasy 15 is great storytelling to me, but I'm not gonna go back and do fetch quests. Sorry. So yeah, but like that's the stagnation of the AAA game is,
Mm.
not even the stagnation, just give me the good story,
Yeah.
please. Why are we losing so many good stories these days? You see your first person shooters don't even have stories anymore. They're all coming out multiplayer only. And while a lot of people like that, I don't. I I loved the first Titanfall game. I thought it was awesome as far as it goes with a competitive shooter, and it rubbed me the wrong way that it was only multiplayer. I wanted the story to that. I wanted the story to that world.
Right.
Obviously we got a little bit of it in Titanfall 2, but I'm a single player gamer. I love the story, and I don't like being yelled at online by little kids.
Even
So,
games that are just like gameplay oriented, like Nuclear Throne. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
oh yeah,
Or
absolutely, yep,
yeah, kind of like Enter the Gungeon and stuff like that. I mean, you're not playing those for the story necessarily, but it's simple and it didn't need anything, and you could throw 90 hours at that game and say you spent all those 90 hours enjoying yourself, laughing, cursing the game, having fun.
yeah.
And I can put 90 hours in a AAA game, and I realize that maybe 20 or 30 of those hours was collecting feathers.
Yeah, you put in an insane amount of time into Darkest Dungeon, like, but you enjoyed
Love that game.
every second of that game.
Yep, swearing and everything.
And then there's other games out there like Civilization games. Obviously, those games are like
Those
time
huge.
sinks. Oh my god, one more turn, one
Hmm.
more turn, one more turn. I think I have over. Well, I have to look at it. I think I'm over like 300 hours into it, into Civilization 5. But I mean that's a lot for me because I'm so all over the place with what I have to get done as far as covering other games and stuff. So if I'm over 100 hours in a game, that means I really really like that game, like really like it. So you know, it's an interesting thing to look at. The indie studio versus the AAA studio. Are we going to see more hybrid studios that are claiming to be indie but are backed by AAA publishers like Sony or Microsoft? I think that's more of the future, and we're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, I think we saw an indication of it at not this year's E3 but last year's E3 with Shenmue 3 being announced. It was announced at Sony, but it was also a Kickstarter. So, it's being backed by Sony, but they also put it up on a Kickstarter to, I'm assuming, just make sure that they're going to have enough interest in the game.
Right.
Are we going to see more of that? Are we going to see more of these big companies pushing out the smaller game and going, hey, we'll back you, but go to Kickstarter and drum up some some sort of following, so we know that we can trust you with our money. So it is some crazy stuff out there. So That's all I have. Indie studios versus AAA studios. Audience, if you have any thoughts, weigh in on it. This will be up everywhere you can get a podcast, or as many places you can get a podcast. We are on iTunes now. Everything goes through SoundCloud as well. Everything gets posted to warpzone.com. Check out that site and all the other fantastic articles that are written by some amazing people over there. Follow us on Twitter. We actually have a Twitter. I've been actually dropping the ball on it. I always am like, every week that we've done this, I'm like, I gotta mention the Twitter, and I haven't, and I finally remembered, and it's at Content Crash Pod. So go check that out. I'll be tweeting as much as I can and keeping you guys up to date on what's going on with the world of gaming. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. We are the Content Crash Podcast. I'm Dan Hartnack. With me was Kino Eastman. And we will see you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.